Councilmember Friedson, thanks so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been on the council for about 6 months now. Tell us what you think. Any surprises?
I would say no surprises, certainly no shocks, maybe some mild surprises, but nothing that is out of the ordinary of starting a new job anywhere. Every place you show up to work has its own institutional differences and adjustments that you have to make, and I'm certainly doing my best to adjust, but I've spent my career in and around government, and so I'm aware of that, in and around the legislative process, and certainly this community is nothing new to me. Definitely a new job, but this type of work, public service, and certainly this community are nothing new.
And you mentioned that. I know you worked at the state level, and I could go back to your college days. You were the president of the student body at the University of Maryland, correct?
Yes.
And then you went on to work for Peter Franchot at the state level, and now the county council. How did you come to the decision with that experience to use that and run for office here?
Well, you know, I started early in my career, even before I had a career in college, and even before that as an advocate. And that's really, you know, who I am deep down. I see a problem, I want to try to fix it. I see challenges in the community, I want to try to change them. I want to try to help people, and that's always kind of been who I am. And then I went into state government, and I was an advisor for most of that time doing fiscal and economic policy work, and it was really important work for me, really valuable work. I learned a tremendous amount, but I also had the opportunity to be an administrator as well. I served on the board, but then ultimately took over the 529 College Savings Program, the $6 billion fund that helps families save for college, and became an administrator, and that was tremendous. Then went back to being an advisor in that role, but deep down I've always been an advocate. A tremendous asset, but it comes with real challenges. It comes with English as a second language classes, which have to be half the size, and so that creates space challenges. It comes with I missed waking up every day and trying to move the needle for people that I represent and for people who I'm looking out for, and not just providing advice to somebody who was doing that, or to oversee the operations of implementing a program as important as it might be, and really that's what the council has allowed me to do, to advocate for the only community I've ever called home.
And you mentioned you're a numbers guy, it sounds like, the 529 experience included, and you sit on the GO committee, and we just wrapped up the budget. Tell me about that experience, and what is different about the county budget as opposed to what you were dealing with at the state level, and do you have some ideas of maybe where we might be able to improve some things and how we do it here?
Well, absolutely. There's certainly always opportunities to change, and there's certainly always opportunities for improvement, and I look forward to providing a voice for making some of those changes, and I think I've already begun to advocate for them. And part of that is through the legislative process. We've pushed for a bill to increase our oversight and really make sure that all of our government agencies have regular, periodic oversight that I think that they need to ensure that we're investing taxpayer dollars appropriately, efficiently, and effectively, and to make sure that the trust that we get from the public is demonstrated through our efforts to ensure that we're investing their dollars responsibly. But I also think that there are less legislative improvements that we can make, and then I continue to push for, and will continue to push for, just in terms of process. How quickly are we getting information? How much information are we getting from the departments who are requesting these large appropriations of taxpayer dollars? How well are we communicating with the public? How transparent and accountable are we being? If there's a question in any of those, the tie should always go to the taxpayer, and transparency and accountability should always be at the forefront of every budget decision that we make.
And I know this idea of a 2-year budget process has been floated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm very open to a 2-year budget process. I think it's certainly a conversation that we should have. I do have concerns, and voiced those concerns during the budget process, of whether or not we're putting the cart before the horse, that before we've had that thorough and robust conversation at the council with the public in a transparent and accountable fashion, that we were starting to invest $100,000 in technological upgrades in order to implement it. And I think that this has been a challenge that I have seen in many other areas, where we tend to start to go down a process before we start asking the questions that need to be asked.
Let's talk about your district. You've got quite the variety. You've got very urban Bethesda, and you've got very rural Poolesville. That's quite a diverse mix of constituents. How do you balance that? How can you be a good council member to the urban folks and then also the folks out in the Ag Reserve?
Where you show up and you listen. And I don't think there's any substitute for that, whether it's an urban area and an urban issue, whether it's a suburban or a rural area and the issues associated with those communities. There is no replacement to showing up. That's why one of our big focuses has been bringing the council to the community. You shouldn't have to come to council chambers to meet your council member. You shouldn't have to come here to express the concerns that you have. It's our job to talk to our constituents in their territory, on their turf, in their terms. And I take that very seriously. But it is a tremendous opportunity to represent what I think is the most geographically diverse local district in the country. It certainly is the most geographically diverse in the county, and I think it's in the state. I've spent a lot of time in a lot of counties across the state, but to have the geographic richness that we have and the amount of talent and the amount of natural treasures that we have in District 1 is unrivaled, I think, anywhere in the country, maybe anywhere in the world. And I take that faith that has been placed in me to represent this amazing district with honor and with humility every single day.
The Ag Reserve is really one of the crown jewels here in Montgomery County. We all believe that, and I know you've been spending some time out there. Talk a little bit about how important or your thoughts on preserving it and making sure that we have that next generation of farmers who can stay there and continue to farm so we can continue to enjoy this treasure.
Well, there's absolutely no doubt that one of the most important land conservation decisions, not just in Montgomery County, not just in Maryland, but anywhere in the country and maybe even the world, was the 1980 designation of the Agricultural Reserve in Montgomery County. It has been widely seen that way. It is absolutely true, and we have to make sure that we don't get complacent about how important that decision was, that we were really on the forefront of smart growth. We were on the forefront of environmental, sustainable land use practices, and we have to make sure that we aren't just resting on our laurels, but we are continuing to press the envelope on ensuring that we are doing the right thing. And when it comes to the Ag Reserve, in order to be environmentally sustainable, we have to make sure that it's economically sustainable. And that has been a commitment that I have had. That's why I've spent a lot of time with our farmers to make sure that we are meeting their needs, to make sure that we're fulfilling not only our agricultural heritage, but our ongoing agricultural needs. And that's why in this budget, it was really important for me to make sure that we were focusing on agriculture. We have a program, Ag in the Classroom, that was proposed to be cut, working with colleagues on the Fed Committee, Will Giwando and Hans Reamer, and along with Craig Rice, who I shared the Agricultural Reserve with as district council members. We pushed ahead with unanimous support and restored $33,000 for that program to plant the seeds of agriculture to our young people.
Speaking of economic development, let's talk about the county as a whole, getting kind of a lot of not so great press about how business friendly we are. How do you think we're doing here, and any thoughts on how we might be able to do a better job at getting those jobs here in Montgomery County?
Well, we need to do better. There's no doubt about that. Perception is reality in economic development. And sometimes we get caught in this idea that, what is the perception, what is the reality? And the truth is, it's a distinction without a difference. We need to double down and make sure that we are focused like a laser on economic growth, because we are growing our county government currently at a rate that we are not keeping up with revenues. And if we don't keep up our tax revenues, everything is at risk. Either taxes have to go up, which our residents don't want, or we have to give up on the high quality of life, the high level of quality services that our residents have come to expect. And neither of those are acceptable outcomes to me. The only option is to grow the economic pie. And in order to do that, we have to grow businesses. We have to attract businesses. We have to make sure that the businesses we have here feel valued, are valued, and that we're viewing them as partners, not as revenue generators, to be able to create the quality of life that we all care about. That's one of the main reasons why I have a bill that I've introduced, and I'm grateful to have the full support of every single member of the County Council as co-sponsors, to make sure that we're looking at the full economic and fiscal reality of every single bill that is proposed at the County Council. This bill really is about making sure that our businesses have a formal seat at the table as we consider all legislation here at the County Council. And it's really about making sure that we're considering the fiscal and economic impact of everything that we do at the county council, not just on the budget of the county, but on the budgets of Montgomery County families and Montgomery County businesses. Every business,
really
every
what this is
nonprofit,
all
every
about.
employer should have a full awareness of what the impact of proposed legislation is going to be before we pass it, because without them, we don't have the revenues to be able to support the programs that our residents rely on and that make Montgomery County such a special place.
Back to your committees that you serve on, Fed, and I know you're the lead for parks.
Yes.
We have over 400 fabulous parks here in Montgomery County. Again, another jewel that you're overseeing, our park system. Talk a little bit about these parks and the money that we're putting towards. We did increase money to parks this year in the budget, and why that's so important to keep that investment going.
We have 421 parks. We just acquired an additional one at the state level, so we're going to be at 422, which I'm really excited about, and 37,000 acres of parkland. This is one of the tremendous treasures of Montgomery County, one of the gems of the quality of life that we care so much about in Montgomery County, and that's why I was so proud as the parks lead to push for and to lead the way to make sure that we restored a $1.7 million cut in our parks department. That would have severely impacted the ability to maintain the parks, the ability to keep up with ball field renovations, which we continue to want to do, and to make sure that the high quality park system that we have in Montgomery County is grown, is activated in terms of the 37,000 acres of parkland that we currently have, but also is increased. I want to do more acquisitions. I want to make sure that in our urban areas we have those open, green public spaces that residents desperately want. I'm pushing for dog parks. We're pushing for other opportunities to make sure that every resident has an opportunity to enjoy the outdoors, to enjoy the great treasures that we have here in District 1 in Montgomery County, and as one of the great places in the country to live.
When you look ahead to the rest of this year and the few more years in your term, what are some of the priorities that we can see coming from you?
Well, it's going to be housing, which I think is one of the main issues when we're talking about economic development, when we're talking about attracting new people, when we're talking about growing our tax base. I don't think you can talk about it without cost of living, without housing. That's why in this budget, I wanted to make sure that we continued that effort and led the effort along with my colleagues to restore $5 million to the Housing Initiatives Fund, which is a huge priority of mine and will continue to be a priority of mine. But we have to forge ahead and make sure that we are not only ensuring affordable housing, but all housing. We have a numbers problem. You said, asked if I was a numbers person earlier. Well, any numbers person can look at the fact that we only have 14% of our rental housing stock was built after 2000. 14%. 55% was built before 1950. We don't have enough housing in Montgomery County. Unless we address that in a serious and a substantive way, we will continue to price out the folks who we desperately need to grow our economy, to increase and improve upon our quality of life. It's not just about new people, it's about the existing residents we have, and we need to make sure that we double down on that, and that relates directly to economic development. Unless we grow jobs to attract those people, we want to meet the demand, but we got to keep the demand, and we're not going to keep the demand for folks who want to live here unless we have high quality jobs with high quality wages to support young workers and to support families and to make sure our seniors can age in place in a significant way. And then obviously we have to keep doing what we've always done, which is sustain our environmental assets, which would make us one of the greatest places on earth to be and to live in, and also make sure that we continue with a world-class education system. We made sure that we fully funded MCPS and that we fully funded the college, which weren't in the proposed budget that was sent over to us, but we were able to make those improvements to continue to move forward on those areas of progress.
Councilmember Andrew Friedson, it was certainly nice to hear from you. A lot to look forward to these next few years.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.